Welcome into CBS News 24/7. I'm Juliette Goodrich. A warning from the head of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, causes U.S. stocks to take a major tumble. Plus, a federal judge finds probable cause to hold the Trump administration in criminal contempt over the deportation of Venezuelan migrants. And an American pastor abducted at gunpoint in South Africa rescued after a shootout. We'll hear from his family. You're watching CBS News 24/7. At the White House, where we expect a press briefing this hour with a, quote, special guest. No word on who that guest will be, but we will monitor it and bring you any news from it as soon as it happens. All right, let's go to Wall Street now. The closing bell rang just moments ago. The Dow down on fresh fears over tariffs as a big tech sell-off gains momentum. So let's take a look at our interactive stock market heat map. This is brought to you by FinViz. This is showing the top 500 stocks. It is a sea of red today, fueling the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell telling the Economic Club of Chicago tariffs came in much larger than anticipated, and they will lead to higher inflation. So let's take a listen.
The level of tariff increases announced so far is significantly larger than anticipated, and the same is likely to be true of the economic effects, which will include higher inflation and slower growth. Tariffs are highly likely to generate at least a temporary rise in inflation. The inflationary effects could also be more persistent.
CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joining us now to walk us through what we just heard from Powell and how the markets are responding. Hi, Kelly.
Hey there, Jules. Okay, so kind of three takeaways for me from Fed Chair Powell. One, the sound that you just played, the fact that he said inflation could be persistent. It's not the first time that we have heard him say this, but I want to emphasize Fed Chair Powell chooses his words very carefully. He's very temperate. And so to now hear him start to use that word regularly is a bit of why you saw the markets react so viscerally when he started speaking. The second thing is Powell is a data guy. Okay, he and the Fed, they are driven by data. And every time I have gone there and I have posed questions to him, he said, look, we have to wait for the data. Today, he said that the data from the first quarter shows that economic growth is slowing down. And that, I think, also caused a little bit of anxiety among investors. And then the final thing is that there is a possibility for stagflation. And I say that because he said, quote, we may find ourselves in the challenging scenario in which our dual mandate goals are in tension. The Fed's two mandates are keeping inflation in check and keeping the labor market and economic growth healthy. When you have those two at odds, that means stagflation. And I just want to play a little bit of sound and when he kind of spelled that out for us.
The administration is, as I mentioned in my remarks, is implementing significant policy changes, and particularly trade now is the focus. And the effects of that are likely to move us away from our goals. So unemployment is likely to go up as the economy slows in all likelihood, and inflation is likely to go up as tariffs find their way, and some part of those tariffs come to be paid by the public.
So, Jules, I mean, you listen to that, you can kind of understand why the market sold off. In fact, at 1:30 p.m. when Fed Chair Powell started speaking, if you looked at the Dow, it went like this. Now, we finished off session lows, but just hearing him say so much uncertainty that we're moving away from their goals potentially with the impact of tariffs spurred a lot of concern.
Yeah, you're used to his rhetoric and his messages, and his tone has certainly changed. We're also watching a big tech drop in the market. So we're talking about AI giant NVIDIA. It sank more than 8%. So what's going on there?
So NVIDIA is an important one, right? It drives AI. It's also a big driver of your 401k because it's a big driver of the S&P 500. And a lot of our 401ks are invested in index funds that track the S&P. So what happened here is NVIDIA announced that they are going to take a hit of $5.5 billion in this quarter. The reason is because of new export controls on the chips that they designed specifically to sell to China to satisfy the restrictions that were put in place under the Biden administration. So what this all means is that the current administration, the Trump administration, came to NVIDIA last week and they said, look, you're going to have to apply for a license if you want to sell any of these chips to China. Jules, normally none of those licenses are ever granted, and so this is an escalation in the tit-for-tat trade war. What it also means for NVIDIA, which is why the stock is dropping, is that they are going to have a hard time capitalizing on a market that they draw a significant amount of their revenue from, Jules.
All right, good information. Kelly O'Grady. Kelly, thank you. Federal Judge James Boasberg said he found probable cause to hold the Trump administration in criminal contempt of court for violating orders to turn around deportation planes to El Salvador. So Boasberg says the Trump administration must try to purge itself of a contempt finding or he will launch hearings. So here's a statement that Boasberg wrote. The court does not reach such conclusion lightly or hastily. Indeed, it has given defendants ample opportunity to rectify or explain their actions. None of their responses has been satisfactory. So CBS News Department of Justice correspondent Scott McFarland is live for us now. So, Scott, let's talk about what the Trump administration has found to be in contempt of court.
Well, first of all, the administration has already declared it's going to appeal what the judge ordered and issued today. But let's dig into what that opinion said. This 46-page opinion found there is the probable cause. The Trump administration, the executive branch of the U.S. government, is in contempt of court, the judicial branch of the U.S. government, which means you're setting up this potentially historic constitutional showdown over court orders. Can they be defied? Have they been defied? Where does this go from here? Well, there are going to be days and days given to the Trump administration to try to what they call purge this contempt finding, which means find a way to resolve this short of a prosecution, short of a administrative remedy by the courts. They could honor the initial court order, return all those deportees as the judge ordered on March 15th. That's unlikely, but the judge has also given the administration the ability to propose their own way of remedying this. But short of that, Jules, this would go into an investigation overseen by the judge, talking about witnesses testifying from the Trump administration under oath, depositions held, and, if necessary, down the road, a court-appointed prosecutor to potentially try to make a criminal case.
Okay, so if we backtrack, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He was sent to that El Salvador prison after being deported because of an administrative error. Just giving background here. The Trump administration then says it can't bring him back, correct? So now, where does that appeal stand to bring him home in the courts?
Yeah, same deportation flights, same date, March 15th, different federal case, which also could lead to contempt of court against the Trump administration. The administration has said they cannot honor a Maryland federal judge's order that he be returned because he was wrongfully, mistakenly deported to El Salvador, a country against which he had protection from deportation because he fled there years ago. He fled from there years ago. The administration has said they are powerless to bring him back because he's now in the custody of El Salvador. That country's leadership has said they can't deport him back to the United States because the administration doesn't approve. So as the judge continues to reiterate her orders that this man be brought back, the administration continues to not follow those orders. This, too, could lead to contempt of court findings against the Trump administration with the same trajectory as the first case.
All right, Scott McFarland. Scott, thank you. Over to the White House. The Trump administration officials say if Abrego Garcia is returned, he will face deportation again. Abrego Garcia was taken to the El Salvador prison on a deportation flight that a U.S. district judge says violated a court order. So CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi is live for us now. So Olivia, thanks for joining us. Let's talk about how the Trump administration is going to respond to Boasberg's statement that he found evidence to hold them in criminal contempt of the court. A lot of legalities here. Thanks for sorting it out for us.
Yeah, absolutely. You heard from Scott that there's two competing cases here. One is what Judge Boasberg said and what he did today, which was find that there's probable cause to find that the Trump administration is in criminal contempt of defying an order of using the Alien Enemies Act, to deport those alleged Venezuelan gang members. That was the first case. Now, the second case also relates to Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was deported to that famous El Salvadorian prison, the C-Note prison. And there, that case is going on where you heard Scott say that that is on a course to also be part of a contempt investigation. But what we heard from Judge Boasberg today was essentially that there's enough probable cause to find Trump administration members in criminal contempt of that court for defying his orders. Now, we heard back from the White House on this specifically from Stephen Chung, who is the communications director. He said that they plan to seek immediate appellate relief. He said the president is 100% committed to ensuring that terrorists and criminal illegal migrants are no longer a threat to Americans and their communities across the country. So the White House seems very intent on fighting this order and this criminal contempt investigation that could be coming from Judge Boasberg. But I want to underscore how intense of a situation this is, that they are looking at a criminal contempt investigation, because that is the difference between sending this over to the Justice Department and referring Trump's Justice Department to pursue criminal charges against members of their own administration for defying this order. So this is certainly some of the highest levels of intensity we've seen going back and forth between the judiciary and this Trump White House over his deportation plans.
Okay, Olivia, let's do talks on Iran's nuclear program. We know it's going to continue into the weekend. So what special envoy, I guess, Steve Witkoff will discuss?
Yeah, Jules, we know that Steve Witkoff is continuing to lead those negotiations, and those will be happening this weekend in Rome on Saturday. Also of note, Vice President J.D. Vance is expected to be in Rome on Saturday, but he is not expected to take part in those negotiations with Iran. A spokesperson told that to me exclusively earlier today, that they will not be taking part in those negotiations, and called it merely a coincidence that they're in the same city at the same time. But Witkoff will continue to lead those negotiations with Iranians and Tehran negotiators over their nuclear deal. Now, this is coming at a very precarious time when the U.S. and Trump specifically have been threatening to really unleash airstrikes against Iran and Houthi rebels and people associated with them if they do not reach a nuclear deal. Now, Iran says that they are getting extremely close to enriching certain amounts of uranium, getting close enough to creating a nuclear bomb. So all of this is coming at a point, really an apex point in these negotiations, as these two countries have really been working out how to sort through this very complicated relationship that has happened over the last several years between them.
All right. And Olivia, at the top of the hour, we talked about the White House giving a press briefing with a special guest in just a few minutes. So we're standing by for that, and we'll bring that to you all live. But what are the details? Do we know who the special guest is and what this press briefing is about?
We don't know who the special guest is yet. We have asked multiple times of who it will be, but they are saying that this will remain a surprise until that briefing takes place at 4:30. This also was a surprise briefing. It was not on the schedule for today. And we also heard from Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, yesterday in a press briefing. So this was a surprise ad late in the day. So everyone's interest kind of peaked up after that. I'm certainly thinking there's a boatload of topics to ask them about, including those Iranian negotiations, including tariffs that you just heard Kelly O'Grady talk about and how the markets are reacting, including everything you just heard Scott McFarland talk about and Judge Boasberg and these various criminal cases or various cases we've seen play out in immigration courts across the U.S. So a lot certainly on the docket to talk about at 4:30.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, our monitors are keeping watch, and we will certainly go live to that White House press briefing as soon as it happens. Olivia, thank you. An American pastor taken by armed suspects in South Africa is now safe. The task force sent in to rescue him. Next, you're watching CBS News 24/7. An American pastor kidnapped by armed gunmen in South Africa has been rescued. Josh Sullivan was kidnapped while delivering a sermon in his church on Thursday. He was rescued earlier today. CBS News correspondent Nicole Valdez is live in Maryville, Tennessee, where Pastor Sullivan is from. So thanks for joining us, Nicole. What do we know about this rescue?
Yeah, his family is calling this a miracle. A specialized task force out of South Africa. They're called the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, or known as Hawks. They received intel on where he was after about a week, of course, a harrowing week for his family. But get this, they say they found the 45-year-old alive, safe, and in, quote, excellent condition after they engaged in a shootout with at least 3 of the 4 people they believe kidnapped that man in front of his own wife and kids on Wednesday of last week. Several shots exchanged between those 3 who happened to be sitting in the car with that pastor when that special task force arrived. All 3 of those suspects were killed. But again, this pastor unscathed. Truly a miracle here. Now, just for some context, Joshua Sullivan, I'm told, has actually been living in South Africa for the last 10 years or so. He opened a branch of his local Tennessee church, the Fellowship Baptist Church here. He and his wife, Megan, and their children have lived there ever since. His mother, Tanya, today telling me she spoke to her son for the first time just last night, moments after his rescue, telling me he told me he loved me and assured me he was unhurt and happy to be with Megan and his kids.
Unbelievable. So, I mean, you had the chance to speak to his family, and that's what they were telling you. Anything else that they shared with you?
Yeah, just moments ago, I was able to sit down with Joshua's father-in-law. His name is David Witt. He is also a preacher here at the church you see behind me. Clearly a family of faith. He says he is relieved to hear the news. When he got the call early this morning, he fell to his knees, and the words will strike you. Listen here.
It was wonderful. It was my son, and he had my daughter, his sister, in the car with him on the way to pick up Joshua, and he simply said, "We got him." And for all the people that I've notified or I spoke to, I simply typed, "We got him, we got him." And that resonated with me so strong, you know, we got him. And sure enough, we do.
Of course, the question now is, why was this pastor taken? Was there a specific motivator here? Now, David Witt tells me he does believe his son-in-law may have been targeted. We, of course, know there was a demand for ransom shortly after he was taken from his church. He believes this was a targeted attack because those kidnappers walked into his church and asked for his 45-year-old son-in-law by name.
Wow, unbelievable. And what an interview there. So much emotion. Nicole Valdez, thank you. An update on a story we first brought to you yesterday on CBS News 24/7. 4 students are now recovering from their injuries after a student opened fire at a Texas high school. The suspected shooter turned himself in. CBS News' Karen Wall reports from Dallas.
Students fled from Wilmer Hutchins High School Tuesday after a suspect opened fire at the Dallas school, shooting 3 males and injuring another. School officials say the suspect is in custody. Sources tell CBS News Texas he turned himself into the Dallas County Jail and is a student at the school. He will be charged with multiple counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon.
He called me and said, "Mama, I got bullets flying around my head."
Shauna Williams has 2 sons at the school.
I'm thinking about taking them out and putting them in homeschool. I can't keep going through this as a parent. I'm telling you, it's very frightening to ever think about losing your child.
For many, Tuesday's incident was deja vu.
It was very traumatic.
Last year, a student was injured in a Wilmer Hutchins classroom after being shot by a fellow student. The school district said it strengthened its security measures after that shooting. According to its website, the district installed about 400 metal detectors in secondary schools during the past 2 years. All students are also required to wear clear backpacks.
The gun did not come through during regular intake time, so it was not a failure of our protocols or of the machinery that we have.
Despite enhanced measures, some students say they aren't surprised a shooting happened again.
So it's kind of normal to us with the security issues.
That student you just heard from says she heard 7 gunshots. Dallas Fire Rescue says those victims range from 15 to 18 years old, and one of the ages is unknown. As for their injuries, those range from non-life-threatening to serious. Karen Wall, CBS News, Dallas.
To Pennsylvania now, where police plan an independent review of security at the home of Governor Josh Shapiro after an arson attack. Police say over the weekend, an attacker set fire to the governor's house while he and his family were asleep inside. Prosecutors arrested 38-year-old Cody Balmer in connection to the attack. Despite the scare, Governor Shapiro today said he won't be held captive by fear.
I've got a lot of work to do for 13 million people. I'm honored to do this work, and I'm not going to be captive to fear, and I'm not going to be captive to worry, and I'm not going to think through those scenarios that others might be contemplating to do us harm.
A search warrant made public today revealed the man charged with setting fire to the home staged the attack because he believed Governor Shapiro's stance on the war in Gaza was leading to the deaths of Palestinians. All right, jumping the map now to California, where Los Angeles police are investigating a brazen heist at a family-owned jewelry store. Police say the thieves likely spent a month drilling a tunnel into the shop through an abandoned building next door. The suspects were somehow able to disarm the store's cameras and alarm system Sunday night before breaching two safes. The thieves made away with $20 million worth of gold bars, jewelry, and cash.
They were in here for 5-6 hours, and in that time they were able to get in the safes, which usually if the alarm went off, they wouldn't be able to get in it for an hour. But since it didn't go off, they had all night here, and they cleared out everything. They literally dug a hole. They probably were digging it for a month.
Authorities are offering a $100,000 reward for any information leading to an arrest. The Trump administration has filed a civil lawsuit against Maine over its decision to allow transgender athletes to participate in women's sports. Attorney General Pam Bondi accused Maine's education department of violating Title IX and putting girls who compete in high school competitive sports at risk of physical injury. 2 months ago, President Trump and Maine's Democratic Governor Janet Mills had a tense exchange at the White House where the president threatened to pull the state's federal funding if it didn't comply with his executive order.
We don't like standing up here and filing lawsuits. We want to get states to comply with us. That's what this is about. We have repeatedly notified Maine of its infractions and urged them to remedy the situation to protect women. We've stripped grants from Maine through other departments, and we are going to continue to fight for women.
In a statement, Maine's governor says the matter is about states' rights and, quote, defending the rule of law against a federal government bent on imposing its will instead of upholding the law. The Justice Department says it plans to go after other states for failing to comply with the Trump administration's policy, including Minnesota and California. On to Arizona now. You can see a cloud of dark smoke over Tucson. It's all because of a tire fire yesterday. No reports of any injuries. Right now, millions of people in the Southwest are on alert for fire weather. So with that, we go to Zoe Mintz on our studio now to talk about that. We're talking about fire weather in that area, and then other parts have their own concerns.
Severe weather and more flooding on the way for the central parts of the United States into Easter weekend, but that fire weather definitely still a big concern across the desert Southwest, where there are these widespread high wind warnings, wind advisories, and even red flag warnings that will be in effect, again, all across the desert Southwest. It's really impacting basically the entirety of the state of New Mexico, as well as up to Colorado, and impacting places like Texas. So basically, this entire area has a very high fire danger all the way through today and tomorrow, which is why we do have that enhanced risk for fire danger across the state of New Mexico today. But look at tomorrow's threat. It only increases to that even higher level, that extreme level of fire danger from Albuquerque all the way to the panhandle of Texas. We are going to continue to see, again, very dry conditions. Just look at our radar over the past 24 hours. There's really not all too much to talk about, but there is going to be a little bit of activity today. You'll notice it beginning to develop below my feet over places like Missouri and Kansas. This little activity just below my feet, this is going to bring the potential for a little bit of severe weather this afternoon. afternoon. But it's tomorrow afternoon that there's that even higher risk for severe weather. And that severe weather threat only increases, like I said, into Easter weekend. So let's break down the timing of that upcoming system, because again, multiple days of severe weather is ahead of us. Thursday's threat will be definitely centered over Iowa and the easternmost parts of Nebraska, while Friday's threat will be widespread from Texas all the way to the Midwest. Tomorrow evening system, again, the highest risk is definitely going to be for hail, large hail over an inch in diameter, as multiple supercells likely going to be moving over Nebraska and over into Iowa. That will continue throughout the overnight hours and into very early Friday morning. But early Friday morning, it's going to start off calm and quiet. But by Friday afternoon and evening, more widespread severe weather will begin setting up. And not just severe weather potential, but very heavy rainfall. That's going to persist from Texas all the way over to the Central Plains and through the Midwest, where there is more chances for excessive rainfall. And these places have already seen a lot of rain over the past couple of weeks, and more potential for rain is likely Friday, Saturday, and even into the weekend ahead of us. So all things to keep in mind, Easter weekend, a lot of people out and about. But if you live in the central part of the United States, keep that in mind for any plans. You might want to keep them inside and try to avoid driving, especially if you are in those flood-prone areas.
Yeah, keep those Easter eggs inside
exactly
and away from the water.
Yeah, indoor Easter egg hunt.
Yeah, thank you, Zoe. Appreciate it. All right, a live look at the White House now, where a press briefing is expected to start any moment now. We'll monitor and bring you any news from it. A town hall hosted by Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene turns into chaos after a protester is tased inside the venue. That's next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Live look now at the White House briefing room and the Dow at the close. So the White House will be briefing soon with a special guest. We don't know who that special guest is as of yet. And this is stocks took a big dive after Fed Chair Jerome Powell said tariffs are highly likely to raise inflation. So we'll monitor the briefing and bring you any news from it just as soon as possible.
The president of that country is not subject to our U.S. Supreme Court.
In Iowa, it's a room full of frustrated constituents. They grill Senator Chuck Grassley over the Trump administration's immigration policies. One man asked Grassley if he will bring back Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the man ICE mistakenly deported to an El Salvador prison. The senator said that's outside the bounds of Congress, but some in the crowd urged him to do more.
We would like to know what you, as the people, the Congress, who are supposed to rein in this dictator, what are you going to do about it? These people have been sentenced to life imprisonment in a foreign country with no due process.
So the heated town hall comes as a string of other lawmakers, including Republicans and some Democrats, face angry constituents and protesters at local town halls across the country in recent weeks. Another lawmaker taking heat from protesters, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. She hosted a fiery town hall in Cobb County, Georgia last night. Police arresting 3 protesters and tased one of them inside that venue. So Greene told the crowd, quote, "This is a peaceful town hall." So CBS News reporter Jared Eggleston joining us live from Atlanta. So Jared, you were there last night. Walk us through what happened.
Jules, good afternoon. It was definitely an unexpected start to the town hall. That video that you just saw there happened at the beginning, within minutes of Marjorie Taylor Greene walking out and addressing her constituents inside this town hall. Now, her team took a lot of preps. They had pre-registration. They vetted those who were going to be inside that room, so things like this did not happen. But in the end, it ended up happening. All in all, 3 people were arrested. Several, about a half dozen or so were escorted out when they started interrupting and talking back and forth with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, those arrests, 2 of those were tased, and they're now facing charges of battery on a law enforcement officer and obstruction. Another woman was screaming vulgarities as she left the room at the Congresswoman. Police there also charged her with using vulgar language. So it was definitely fiery, but she didn't end up even taking any questions from those constituents inside the town hall. She took sent in questions and read them off of a PowerPoint as well.
Wow. Okay, so before any of that happened, she did touch on a number of issues. What was her message?
You know, her message was, as many people would expect, many of us who watch Marjorie Taylor Greene and watch these Congress people, she has unwavering support for the president, saying that he's doing great on everything from immigration to the economy to tariffs, and even talking about dismantling the IRS, something that we've been hearing about, cuts via DOJ and other agencies. She said on dismantling the IRS that she certainly hopes that the president does that. So she definitely was not backing down on her support from the former president, or of the president, I should say, excuse me. She also said that she wanted to level the playing field with other countries, saying that these tariffs that the president has implemented are a good thing, and she wants to continue to see more of what the president is doing in Washington right now. Jules.
All right, CBS News reporter Jared Eggleston, thank you so much. There are growing concerns about how ICE agents are conducting arrests and detentions. This comes as a number of arrests captured on video are raising questions about how detainees are treated. Take a look. So cameras were rolling when ICE agents smashed a car window to forcibly remove a man in Massachusetts. 29-year-old Juan Francisco Mendez has no criminal record and was waiting for his final documentation to solidify his asylum status. When agents approached the car, they asked for a man named Antonio and demanded he get out of the car. Mendez said he was waiting on his lawyer and he wasn't Antonio. By the time she arrived, he was already detained.
They said they were looking for a certain individual by a different name. And I said, that's not my client. He said, he has prior entries to this country. I said, that's not true. I know my client's history. That is not him.
Mendez's lawyer says she found him at a facility in New Hampshire. She has not been told about any charges or why he is still in detention.
No! Oh, mommy!
In another incident, ICE agents smashed the car window to detain a Salvadoran woman in Maryland. Her daughter, who you could hear in the video, says agents did not have a warrant, so her mother, Elsie Barrios, refused to get out of the car. ICE says she is a known affiliate of MS-13, but her attorney says the ICE presented no evidence to support their claim. In New Hampshire, 2 plainclothes federal agents detained a Venezuelan man as he arrived for a hearing. Marquez Colmenares ran from an elevator as agents tried to take him into custody. Then agents tackled him as he ran, knocking down another man with a cane. Colmenares was going to an arraignment hearing for drunk driving charges. He missed proceedings due to the detention. The Department of Homeland Security is also drawing criticism for its detentions of people in the country legally. Plainclothes agents wearing masks detained Tufts student Ramesa Ozturk and carried her away in an unmarked SUV last month. Some in the community where she was arrested have compared the arrest to a kidnapping. Ozturk is accused of supporting Hamas, but she was not charged with anything. We follow our map now to California, where Governor Gavin Newsom and Attorney General Rob Bonta say they're suing the Trump administration to halt his sweeping tariffs. So Newsom and Bonta announced the lawsuit just today, and they argue Trump does not have the authority to impose his wide-reaching tariffs. And they say the tariffs threaten to wreak havoc on California families, businesses, and the economy. So let's take a listen to what he had to say.
It's simple. Trump does not have the authority to impose these tariffs. He must be stopped.
I mean, no rationale, no plan, no conscience to what it's doing to real people, no consideration of congressional responsibility. Where the hell is Congress? Where the hell is Speaker Johnson? Do your job. They're sitting there passively as this guy wrecks the economy of the United States of America.
Newsom says no state is poised to lose more than the state of California when it comes to tariffs. He says the state plays a crucial role in manufacturing and in agriculture, making it especially vulnerable. So this lawsuit likely sets the stage for a Supreme Court showdown. A new study on autism is out. What health experts are saying about the numbers. That's next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. New research points to an increase in autism diagnosis among American children. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is calling it an epidemic and promising answers. So the report found that in 2022, 1 in 31 kids were diagnosed with autism by age 8. That's up from 1 in 36 kids reported in 2020. Kennedy is calling autism a preventable disease. He rejected the theory that rising rates are due to better diagnosis and blames environmental toxins for the increase.
There's an extreme risk for boys. Overall, the risk for boys of getting an autism diagnosis in this country is now 1 in 20. These are kids who, many of them were fully functional and regressed because of some environmental exposure into autism when they're 2 years old.
Earlier today, we spoke to Dr. Peter Hotez, professor of pediatrics at Baylor College of Medicine. He said there are a variety of factors that have led to the increased rates.
First, there is an increase in autism diagnoses, and it really revved up in the early 2000s because the American Academy of Pediatrics asked pediatricians to start doing autism screening between 1 and 2 years of age. So that led to a big increase. So with diagnoses, not necessarily true cases of autism, and then the criteria were changed from autism to autism spectrum disorder. By the way, along the same lines, we got better at diagnosing autism in girls and women. We used to say it was 1 to 10 boys to girls, then it's 1 to 3, and now it's probably closer to parity. It's just that we've gotten more sophisticated in how we diagnose autism. So the lion's share of it is clearly autism diagnosis. Now, when I talked to Mr. Kennedy, I pointed out that there are at least 100 genes now involved in autism, and these operate in early fetal brain development. So autism occurs in early pregnancy. It has nothing to do with vaccines. And I pointed out that there are some environmental exposures in pregnancy that could influence autism genes. For instance, I explained to him that if you're pregnant and not aware of it and taking an anti-seizure medication called Depakote, also known as valproic acid, your child's more likely to be born with an autism phenotype. And there's at least half a dozen such chemical exposures in pregnancy have been identified.
Dr. Hotez went on to say that the scientific community knows about those exposures and has asked Kennedy to look into them. A missing child walks 7 miles alone in the Arizona desert. How a rancher's dog helped save him. The incredible rescue. Next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. New developments on the deaths of Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife. The Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office releasing new body cam video showing the initial search of the couple's home. And a warning, some of the video is disturbing. CBS News' Jonathan Vigliotti has the story.
Hey, did you hear whose property this is?
No.
Gene Hackman.
Well, I've already been threatened, though. Yeah. We have to keep it.
That's his wife.
Gene Hackman's handyman is heard telling first responders to keep news of the actor's death quiet in newly released body cam footage.
Feet. Oh, I see feet, too. We see feet over here.
With the graphic portions blurred, the video shows the moment deputies discover Hackman's body in a mudroom.
Yeah, he's down. He's been down for a while.
An autopsy found Hackman died of heart disease and Alzheimer's.
He's guarding her.
The dog?
Yeah.
In another video, a family dog was sitting next to the body of Hackman's wife, Betsy Arakawa, who investigators say died a week before Hackman of hantavirus, a rare respiratory illness spread by rodents.
Let me see that. Yeah, I was just looking at that.
Investigators revealed she was scouring for information on her laptop about flu-like symptoms and breathing techniques and ordered oxygen canisters. Authorities also released this surveillance video of Arakawa wearing a mask in a grocery store about 2 weeks before they were found. 8 different outbuildings on the couple's property were found to have dead rodents and nests by the New Mexico Department of Public Health. However, the main house showed no signs of infestation.
Jonathan Vigliotti, CBS News.
A 2-year-old who got lost in the Arizona desert overnight is safe after a rancher's dog led him back to civilization. So Bowden Allen wandered off from his home in Seligman, Arizona Monday night. 7 miles away from where Bowden went missing, a rancher named Scotty Dutton woke up to something surprising at the end of his driveway.
I was getting ready to leave. I'd heard about the missing child before I was going to town, and when I was driving out the driveway, I noticed my dog was sitting down by the entrance, and I look up and the little kid standing there with my dog. Knowing that he was the missing child, it was a relief that he was alive. So I was, ecstatic that he was okay and that my dog found him.
Oh, the rancher says his dog Buford, there he is a guardian dog who patrols the house at night and keeps coyotes away. As a reward, he says he treated Buford to a big steak dinner. News we're following around the world now. Several people were killed in Gaza following a strike by Israel. The Israeli defense minister says troops will remain in security zones in Gaza indefinitely as a buffer between the enemy and Israeli communities. Israeli forces have taken over large areas of Gaza to pressure Hamas to release the remaining Israeli hostages. The United Kingdom's highest court ruled that the legal definition of a woman excludes transgender woman. The case will have sweeping consequences for how equality laws apply, but the court says trans people will still be protected from discrimination on grounds of gender reassignment. The case was sparked by a 2018 law requiring 50 female representation on boards of Scottish public bodies. The Vice President and First Lady are traveling to Italy to participate in Holy Week events. They'll leave tomorrow and meet with the Italian Prime Minister. Then they'll meet with the Vatican Secretary of State for Easter Sunday ceremonies. Vance is also expected to visit New Delhi, India, with the Second Lady. All right, let's bring up our TikTok tube. CBS News Minnesota's Aaron Hassan-Zeta traveled to the polar bear capital of the world to see firsthand how a small Canadian village is fighting to save the animals.
We traveled to the polar bear capital of the world, Churchill, Manitoba. It's a beautiful little spot on the map, home to 870 people, but it's a community on the front lines of climate change. And so in our documentary, On the Edge, you're going to meet a ton of memorable, really relatable people from across the town that are fighting to protect their way of life. They're fighting to protect their famous polar bears too, these world famous polar bears that are the most studied and photographed of anywhere in the world. Their population's already been cut in half in the last 40 years, and there's so many people who are invested in trying to figure out their future, their path forward, not just for the bears, but for the town that relies on them, that identifies with them. Polar bears are a big part of life in Churchill, all around, economically, culturally, all of it. And so this is a story about the people and polar bears of a warming Arctic and how it serves as a warning for us all, because we've learned that what happens in the Arctic doesn't stay there, that it's all connected. And we learned that from the scientists at Polar Bears International and the world-renowned climate scientists and bear biologists that we speak with. This is a story about a place that may be far away for you, but it's a story that impacts all of us.
You can go to CBS News Minnesota to watch their original documentary, On the Edge, the people and polar bears of a warming Arctic. Our social team has so much great content like this on our TikTok and Instagram pages, so please follow us at the handle CBS News. Moose are migrating. So this is a 24-hour live stream. It's capturing the migration of moose in Sweden, and millions of people tune in for this. So the slow TV hit is called The Great Moose Migration. You can see them here. They're crossing a Nordic river, and this is expected to be the scene for the next few weeks. So neat to see. America Decides with Major Garrett is next with a look at a new Netflix docuseries on the Vietnam War that uses CBS News archives and declassified government records. Major speaks with the director. That's next. You're watching CBS News 24/7.